art nerds. So I popped by my local Jerry's Artarama today. I picked up some goodies and I also talked to them about possibly putting up a flyer for my making comics and zine class in their window. They were really nice about it, so I'm going to be going by in a couple of weeks, probably spending more money, and putting up a flyer to advertise my local to Nashville comics and zine class through Nashville Community Ed. But you guys are not watching this video for that pitch. You're watching to see what goodies I picked up at Jerry's, and it's pretty much all watercolor stuff. So I have a Hydrus watercolor. I did an unboxing swatch a while back. I want to revisit that and kind of put it through different paces. So I picked up Ultramarine because I know I'm kind of lacking in blues. I also picked up some Turner watercolors. You guys have seen me do an unboxing swatch for the set I got in Japan. These are, I mostly went for like opaque colors. And I also picked up Quinacridone Sienna, which seemed like it was going to be a beautiful orange red. And don't worry, I'll swatch these for you guys soon. I also picked up a Strathmore Watercolor Visual Journal. I don't actually like these all that much for watercolor, but I love them for inking. And finally, on the recommendation of my friend Kabosha, I picked up a Reflections Sketchbook. This is just a mixed media sketchbook. I really like mixed media sketchbooks, and it's in a good size. They were on sale, so I paid like under $4 for it, which is a great deal if it actually works well. It's a nice size at 7 by 10. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate all these products for you guys so you can check them out for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the Reflections Journal. It is made with 80 sheets, 160 pages of premium, acid-free, 110 or 70 pound pale cream paper with a fine, even surface, bound using a double wire spiral binding and a heavy black debossed back cover. Excellent for all sorts of media, including pen and ink, colored pencil, drawing chalks, pastels, graphite, and other dry media, as well as light watercolor washes. Great for the field, as you can flip over the used sheets and use the covers as a stiff drawing support. 80 sheets, 160 pages, 110 grams, 70 pound, acid-free, 7 by 10, micro perforated for easy removal. Recommended for pencil, chalk, graphite, crayon, ink, and light watercolor. Creative Mark Artist Products. And indeed, it has a really nice chipboard cover on both sides. And I am not one for fancy sketchbooks. I'm not one for fancy journals because I never use them if they're fancy. Ooh, I do like the texture on this. It's like a thin mixed media paper. So this should probably take ink really nicely and will probably take watercolor really nicely. But you know what, guys? There's only one way to find out. And I know some of you guys are kind of watching this video for Inktober-y stuff. So I think this would be a great opportunity for us to swatch our watercolors, and I'll do that in the Strathmore book as well. And I don't really feel like doing any brush inking, but I will grab a couple of my favorite inking tools, the Sakura Pigma FB and the Pentel Pigment Brush Pen, and we can do something with these. So for my Inktober, and I am going to do a video for you guys where I talk about all my favorite kind of sketchbooks, spiral bound books for inking. For my Inktober, I'm going to be using blue or other colored lead, an ink wash, and also these pens. And I'm also going to be using the Strathmore, their mixed media visual journal. But I love watercolor papers and mixed media papers for inking. So it does actually have a bit of tooth. It's not plate finish smooth. So if you have trouble with tooth, this is not a paper for you. I like tooth. It holds on to graphite. It holds on to colored leads. You get a nice amount of dry brush. I feel like it has a lot of character. I'm not a graphite kind of gal, but let's grab some Copic markers. Let's grab some alcohol markers. And if you're working with a new sketchbook, it's always good to perform these kind of tests before you kind of commit yourself to an illustration that might not work on that paper. And this isn't necessarily a good blending triad either. Just grab 3, but that's okay. Paper seems very absorbent. I would call it thirsty. So this is, if you're using alcohol markers on this paper, it's going to take up a lot of your alcohol ink. So just be aware of that. It did not bleed through. So you probably could hit a point where it will bleed through, but you know, for light alcohol marker work, this could be good. Now for my watercolor tests, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total watercolor products. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 5 boxes. I need to toss this particular pigment FB because it is dying. It's a little bit better. Use the heck out of these things, so I tend to go through them pretty quickly. Okay, so 3, 4, 5, 'Do a little bit of opacity testing, because why the heck not? Alright, I'm going to let that dry, or cure rather, and we're going to switch over to experimenting with our watercolor visual journal. You guys have seen me talk about and review these here on the channel. Like I said, I do like them for inking. Not the hottest on them for watercolor. I actually prefer the Strathmore Visual Journal to this. It is a bit more expensive though. But this is a cellulose-based paper. It's so it means it's wood pulp. It's embossed with a watercolor texture rather than being like mold made. It's just very prone to lifting up layers. But it takes ink really well. It takes brush and ink really well. You can even use, because it's not quite as textured as I remember it, even this one doesn't seem to have as much texture as some of my older notebooks. You can even use nib with it if you're careful. You don't overwork the area. Okay, so we need 5 boxes, and these will be smaller because we have less room. I really do need to get more of these. Dangity dang. Oh, we also need to do our Copic. Alright, so we've got our 5 boxes. And we have the same 3 colors. This paper also takes Copic. I actually really like using my Copics on cellulose-based watercolor papers. I like doing Copic and watercolor together. It can be a good use for this sketchbook. This is 140-pound paper, so it's nice and thick. It's not likely to soak through. It is very, very thirsty though, as you guys can see. It takes more ink to do the same amount of coverage. So while I enjoy using my Copic markers on these uncoated thirsty papers, I know they're not a good fit for everybody. They also require a little bit more blending out. However, if you are the sort of person who wants to do 10 million layers, heavier papers like this can be a good option. Alright, so let us go ahead and begin our watercolor swatches, shall we? I'm going to begin by swatching the Turner Artist Watercolors. And I mostly bought cheap stuff and opaque stuff, but I did splurge a little bit. It was only $8. It's not that much of a splurge. And I got the Quinacridone Sienna. It was the last one they had. So here's hoping. I mean, it's a beautiful color. It's just super ready to come out of its tube and say hello. Oh, that's beautiful. This seems like it might be a good paper for washes. Because there is some tooth. Now, there is some areas where it doesn't really want to blend out. But other than that, it's a beautiful color. I am actually really excited because I'm going to add that to my Everyday Daily Driver palette after I do a little bit more testing. Alright, that is such an intense color too. So we're going to swoosh on back over to our Strathmore. And I'm looking, when I'm doing these sort of tests, I'm looking for a couple qualities, not just with the watercolor, although there's some beautiful granulation with the watercolor and it seems very transparent, but I'm also looking to see if the paper warps as I add water to it. If that's the case, then I'm going to need to secure it if I'm going to paint with it. So far with the Strathmore, no warping. Little bit of warping with the Reflections paper, but not much. And it's not nearly as thick either. And this is marked for light watercolor washes, so this could be good for like maybe some pen and ink work. What's interesting is the color is a little bit darker on the cream paper than it is on the white paper, showing that, you know, your paper's surface makeup can make a big difference in how your color comes across. And I thought I would darken up the color a little bit, but instead I seem to have lifted the color up a bit. It's one of the things I don't care for with the Strathmore Visual Journal watercolor paper. I would really love it if they did a 400 series the way they have for their mixed media paper. I'm going to give this over here just another layer as well. But that's a beautiful color. I can see myself using the heck out of this. It is a type of burnt sienna. So, beautiful color with lots of shading. Alright, so I'm going to go get a clean cup of water and we're going to test out our 3 light, probably opaque colors. These are all in Series A and they have the cutest names: Pale Wisteria, Sprout, and Freshwater. Alright, so I'm going to start playing with these beautiful opaque, well, I say beautiful, hopefully they're beautiful, with these opaque watercolors. And normally I kind of stay away from opaque watercolors because I usually just mix my colors super lightly. But ever since I've started kind of learning more about Chinese watercolor and Japanese watercolor, I've become increasingly interested in utilizing opaque colors here and there. Who knows, maybe someday I'll even be into gouache. Okay, that is very opaque. But it's a really pretty, very light color. I have no idea how well that's going to reconstitute from a half pan. And it's not something I can see myself using as a daily driver, but it is definitely something I can see myself using on occasion. I've been amassing a little collection of opaque watercolors, so someday I'll actually get good at using them. But yeah, these are so opaque they could almost be used as a gouache. And I'm starting to get a little bit of buckling on the Strathmore Vision Journal. And I need to go replace my cup of water because it's opaque. Next up, we're taking a look at Sprout, another Series A color. Oh, okay, that was under pressure. At some point in the near future, I will probably do a video on all of my opaque watercolors. And I don't mean gouache, I mean specifically watercolor. Since I am amassing quite a collection of them, and we can do a comparison. Wow, that is super opaque. And we can talk about what pigments are in them. Most use PW6 or PW8 though. I mean, that's got some coverage, huh? And on this paper, it's a little, you have to work a little harder. Oh, I should move over for you guys to be able to see. You have to work a little bit harder in order to get it to blend out, but you can blend it out. It's not impossible. And these are also full of white because they made the water. They made the water almost opaque all over again. So I'm going to go get a fresh cup. Next, we're taking a look at pale Wisteria, the last of our opaque watercolors. And something I'm noticing about these Turner watercolors, at least from my Jerry's, is that they are very prone, they are easily excited watercolors that just want to come spilling out of the tube. There's also a fair amount of air inside each tube. I don't know if it's how they're displayed or how they were manufactured, but it's definitely something to think about if you're messing with Turner watercolors, because all of my tubes were overly excited, over eager to see me. Alright, pale Wisteria. So again, over here on the Strathmore Vision Watercolor Journal, this one isn't as opaque. And then over here on the Reflections Sketchbook, keep wanting to call it a mixed media sketchbook, but nothing on the packaging said it was mixed media. And there are different types. I had initially grabbed a hardbound non-spiral one that was more for dry media, but I switched out when I saw that they had one that accepted wet media a little bit better. Okay, that's 2 layers. I'm going to try to blend it out. Now this one has a lot of white in it. And then finally we have our Hydrus Ultramarine to swatch. So for the Hydrus, rather than dipping my brush inside, I'm going to use the included dropper, and I'm just going to put some drops on my craft sheet. And that is really, really nice. That's full strength. It is so blue, I bet it even sheens red. And I'm probably not giving it enough room to really show its range, because that's still pretty dark down there. And then we're going to do the same over here. I should also state that this Reflections journal, it was on sale. It's definitely, obviously bigger than the Strathmore Visions, or I'm sorry, Art Visions Visual Art Journal something. Sorry, it cut me off there. Okay, so the Reflections journal is definitely a lot larger than the Strathmore journal, and it costs about half. Now it was on sale, but store brand things are usually much less expensive than branded things in general. So if you're just looking for a sketchbook that can take a variety of mixed media techniques and can take some watercolor, the Reflections journal isn't bad, especially if you're looking just to kind of practice some things in it, to get your sketching down. Of course, later on, I will put it to a, more comprehensive test. There is some buckling, there is some pooling right here. I mean, it's not perfect, but if you treat it like a sketchbook, then I think it could be a really good, inexpensive solution for those of you who live near Jerry's and can just swing down there and pick one up. Because in store, Jerry's is almost always having sales on their own branded products. But that ultramarine is beautiful. So thank you guys so much for joining me today, checking out my haul from my local Jerry's Artarama. I hope this was useful and helpful for you guys. I think I have a full review of the Strathmore Art Journal here on the channel, and I'll be sure to check in later with a review of the Reflections Journal. I hope you guys have a great Inktober. I hope you guys will keep an eye out for my upcoming kind of overview of some of my favorite Inktober / inking sketchbooks, spiral bound books. People are always asking about that kind of thing, and I prefer to work in a spiral bound book myself. It's just nice to have everything in one place. It's easier to scan. It's easier to bring with me because I travel a lot. So for me, working spiral bound is really one of the handiest ways for me to work. And I know a lot of other artists fall into that category as well. So hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I will see you again really soon with another fantastic art video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!